The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
That was almost unquestionably the craziest 7-game Wednesday that I can remember. That was crazy. There was so much stuff going on Wednesday night. This is almost going to be a little bit box scory, although I am going to dodge a handful of games that I just thought were thoroughly uninteresting. But damn, Derrick Rose scored 50. 50 points last night for Derrick Rose. You guys may have seen me tweeting about what I'm calling sort of like flyer pickups in the afternoon yesterday. One of them was Rose, one was Okobo, and one was Sam Dekker. And not necessarily that I felt like those three guys had to be picked up in the afternoon, but I was looking at one of my teams, and I had picked up Ersan Ilyasova with the, I don't want to say hope, because that's the wrong word. You don't hope guys miss time, but with the possibility looming that Giannis Antetokounmpo might miss more than one game with his concussion, it looked like Ilyasova was going to be the big beneficiary. And in that particular league, I had a huge hole in rebounding. Badly needed rebounding. I thought, you know what, if I can milk like a 9-rebound game out of Ilyasova, whatever else he does is gravy, and it looks like he's playing well. Then, yesterday in the afternoon, we got word that Giannis was only going to miss the one game. He was on track to play today, Thursday. And so Ilyasova basically became old food. He was like a rotten thing I found in the back of my refrigerator. There's no reason for me to keep it in my refrigerator. If I leave it there, it's just going to spoil more. The best thing you can do in that moment is to get it out of your refrigerator and throw something else in. And so that was the assessment behind my tweet. It was sort of like, listen, if you guys have someone in your refrigerator who's just totally useless right now, or has no upside, go grab one of these weird flyer picks that has a strange, circuitous route to value, but if they take it, it's a low percentage thing. It's a Hail Mary. It might work 1 out of every 20 times, but if you have that guy, the 1 out of 20 times that it does work, you not only look like a genius, but you get a great fantasy player on your team. So that was why I thought that direction. And so in 2 of my money leagues, I picked up Derrick Rose. Thought, whatever, what the hell. One of them I picked up Sam Dekker because Rose was already owned. And in a couple I picked up Elie Okobo because he was largely unowned, but I only had so many of these roster spots. You have limited number of them. I basically have like 1 on all of my important teams where I'm just flipping guys around. And of course, every couple of days, some other guy on my team that I thought was a good value starts to fall apart anyway. So I looked really smart in a couple of spots, but that's not fair. And the way I want to start this show is to say I don't think I should look smart for picking up Derrick Rose right before his 50-point game. It was a shot in the dark. It was Jeff Teague is out, Tyus Jones is out, Jimmy Butler's sitting it out and might be traded by tomorrow. I'm going to pick up Derrick Rose because there's just no way he doesn't take like 25 shots in this game, and please, Lord, let him make some of them. It was a big-time roll of the dice. I mean, he could have taken 31 shots and made 8 of them, and it would have been the worst pickup of all time. But he made most of them and scored 51 points and had a ball. And so, cool for us because that tweet worked out really well, and we all looked super smart, and we're going to talk about that game more in a moment. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, everybody. It's a wacky Thursday episode, if only because Wednesday was nuts. We are also, by the way, and the timing could not be more perfect, because the second to last game on the docket last night to finish was San Antonio Phoenix. It was one of the 3 late games. Phoenix got blown out again, and we're going to talk to Adam Maynes on today's podcast, A Valley of the Suns, to get an idea of what the heck is going on in Phoenix. How do they pull this thing out of a nosedive, and who's going to be the guy to do it? Or guys, as it were. So we'll talk to Adam after we go through yesterday's games. We will, of course, also set you up for a medium-sized Thursday. The NBA schedule makers are giving us a nice, even week with a slight descending tone. We have 9 games on Monday. We had 8 games on Tuesday. We had 7 games yesterday, and we have 6 games today. We do not have 5 games tomorrow. It goes back up to 8. But we'll get to all that. There's so much to cover from just 7 games yesterday. We're going to dive right in. After I remind you, you can follow me, Dan Besbris, on Twitter, at DANBESBRIS. That's my last name. It's Besbris. It is spelled the way it sounds, but on a podcast, it's hard to figure out how it sounds. Bravo is the first letter. E, then an S, Sierra. Bravo again, R-I, Sierra again. I know we did the military letters for all of them, but a lot of those don't sound like other letters. Just the B and the S. It's all B's and S's. That's all I give you here on Fantasy NBA today. A whole lot of B and S. Yes. What a wonderful start to the day. Okay, let's dive right in. Detroit at Brooklyn. I don't care. See? I told you there were going to be a couple of games I didn't pay much attention to yesterday. This one brought us no new information. Joe Harris went big. Blah, blah, blah. Brooklyn guards. It's a different one every game. Hope you sold high on some of these guys, bought low on others, blah, 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 blah. The story goes on and on. Let's get right into the one that everybody wants to hear about. Utah, Minnesota. Storylines abound. Donovan Mitchell hurt his hamstring in this ballgame right at the tail end. The hope is that it was just this little thing, and he should be ready to go for the next one, but we know what hamstrings can do. If Mitchell misses time, that's a good thing for Ingles and Rubio. I don't know that anybody else is going to really take a big leap forward. Maybe a little bit more Dante Exum. I think you're just going to see a Jazz team that tries to slow things down a lot more. And will it work? Probably not. Jazz are not an interesting fantasy team in general. Minnesota, however, suddenly is. Because Derrick Rose played 41 minutes last night, on his way to 50 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, a block on the last play of the game, 6 turnovers. Yeah, he did that too. But he made 61% of his shots, and he took 31 of them, so a big-time boost to your field goal percent. He was not great at the foul line. He was about 1 made free throw away from being better at the foul line, and 4 3-pointers on top of everything else. It was a monster of a game. But due to a lack of efficiency in free throws and turnovers, it was not the best line of the night. Doesn't matter. You're not complaining about a 50-point game. Can he do this again? The answer is a resounding no. Can he be useful? The answer is absolutely. This is basically, minus Jeff Teague, what the team looks like without Jimmy Butler. There are a boatload of shots to go around. Put Teague back in there. And, a guy like Josh Okogie likely goes back to the bench. Or if Rose goes back to the bench, then he's still going to play probably 30 minutes off the bench. And honestly, I'm not that sad about that because you bring him in when the starters are going out, and that means he can just take any shot he wants. Taj Gibson starting to split time with Anthony Tolliver a little bit. This is something they probably should have done a while ago, but don't move on from Taj yet because he keeps finding a way to put up value, whether it's with field goal percent or a couple of defensive stats or generally a better rebounding game. Not this one. So you're not quite kicking him to the curb yet. You're also not picking up Tolliver yet. Wiggins was back. He took 17 shots. This is another good note. This is a positive note if you expect Derrick Rose to be marginally useful. Here's the thing, though. We can't get carried away. I have said on many podcasts prior to this one that I don't believe in Derrick Rose, and I still don't, because from a 9-cat perspective, the insanely high volume 60% shooting is the outlier. It brought his season shooting percentage up to 44. He's still outside the top 100 in 9-category formats. So despite a monster game out of 8, only 7 other games, so it's not like averages needed to be moved a whole lot. He's still outside the top 100 because his free throw shooting has not been up to his usual standards. He's turning the ball over a decent amount this year, and he doesn't do anything on the defensive side in general. But if he continues to play 26 to 30 minutes per game, he's a guy that can get you 5 assists. He's a guy that can get you 15 points. And you just sort of wear that a little bit. If you have a team, I have a lot of teams, personally, that are not particularly good at scoring. You guys know that's sort of how I draft a lot of the time. And I have one team that is oddly poor at passing, a low assist team. So for that team, Derrick Rose actually makes a decent amount of sense. He's going to grab his 3 to 4 rebounds because he's just going to be in the game long enough to get them. And you just hope that he sort of runs into a steal and a three-pointer. And you hope that he can shoot 43 to 45%, that the bottom doesn't fall out on that thing. So you roll with it. And hope that yesterday's game, obviously the high point, blends in with some of the low points and gets him into top 90. And that's the thing with Derrick Rose. It's very hard for him to get over that hump because he doesn't do anything on the defensive side, and he's not a big three-point guy. But there is a world where a guy who can score and assist a little bit is worth putting on your fantasy team. That guy was basically Dennis Schroeder last year, and Dennis Schroeder is not going to do that kind of stuff this year now that Russell Westbrook is back. Dennis Schroeder, by the way, outside the top 200. Outside the top 200. Tried to warn you about that, dude. Otherwise, in Minnesota, the buy low window on Karl Anthony Towns is closing abruptly. 28 and 16 with 4 three-pointers, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 4 assists. This is despite missing 2 free throws, which is somewhat uncharacteristic of Karl. He's a monster. I hope you guys tried to buy him. My thing was throw Dame Lillard out there, see if you can upgrade an end of first-round guy to a beginning of first-round guy. And most people were like, I don't think I could give up Dame for him. Well, look at this line and tell me you couldn't give up Dame for that. You could, and you should. Okay, other storylines from yesterday. We continue to track the Denver Nuggets to see if anybody's going to do anything off of the bench for them, and the answer is still mostly no. Sort of disappointing. Maybe it'll be IT. I don't know. With Chicago, this is a team we were trying to figure out what was going to go on with Jabari Parker in the starting lineup. It didn't go well. Wendell Carter Jr. playing massive minutes right now with basically everybody hurt. I think his minutes do come down a bit when Portis and Markkanen come back. They sort of have to. But right now, he is dominating, and he should be used in every format. You're probably going to still use him even after those guys come back, but it's not going to be 25 and 8 with 5 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. I mean, this has a possibility of being his best line of the year. Justin Holiday, cruising along. He's a 9-cat monster right now. 15 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, a block, 5 3-pointers, 5 out of 10 shooting, 0 turnovers. I'm starting to think Jabari Parker should be thrown into the scrap heap of history, probably. If he can't do it, with all of those guys out, he's just not going to do it. I thought there was a world where he could sort of turn in a TJ Warren-like year of decent percentages with some rebounds and maybe luck into a steal every once in a while, but he's a disappointing basketball player right now, and maybe things will improve. He did play 35 minutes last night, so I'm not saying you dump him right yet, but I am saying that he's on the chopping block, especially if there's somebody out there who has better fantasy upside. With Parker, the fantasy upside is he's going to get a bunch of shots, and that's not going to happen in the starting lineup. It was almost better for him coming off the bench. But it's only going to get worse. Markkanen is a month away. Portis is 4 to 5 weeks away. Dunn is 4 weeks away. Valentine is 1 to 2 weeks away. As this team gets healthy, things are really going to get jammed up. We ought to be careful, by the way, with Justin Holiday at that point. Although he's playing so well, I don't know how they move him out. But we're going to keep an eye on the Bulls as they start to get healthy. Right now, it's Wendell Carter Jr., Zach LaVine, Justin Holiday, and those are the guys you're starting, not the point guards either. The Knicks and the Pacers, that was one of our other homework games, and it might actually be the last homework game because most of the late evening ones were largely uninteresting. Those teams playing at night, you just sort of know what to expect from them. Thad Young, baby! Been waiting a while to announce his name loudly on a podcast. 13 points, 10 boards, 5 steals, and 3 blocks. He missed 2 free throws, and he ruined everything, but he did have a three-pointer in there. He went 5 for 10 from the field. This is the Thad Young that you were drafting, the guy that plays his 34 minutes and does get rebounds and gets a bunch of steals. It doesn't fix all of the things from the slow start, but it's amazing what one game can do. Thad Young now just outside the top 100 in 9-cat on a per-game basis. He jumped about 50 slots with that game last night because suddenly now he's back up to 1.6 steals per game. His field goal percentage is at 54, which has been good all along. His turnovers are always low. The rebounds came up to 4.8. They went up by almost a full rebound in one game. And he's not that far away from last year all of a sudden. He's less than a point difference right now. The field goal percent is way higher. The only real change for Thad after yesterday's game gets blended in with the bad ones is that he's down about a rebound and a half season over season, but maybe yesterday was the start of something. So if you had Thad Young, hopefully you didn't part with him. You guys know how much I like him. He did not get dropped in any of my leagues, which tells you that they are competitive and that the people I'm playing against have a little bit of patience and are also wise. Meanwhile, Domantas Sabonis went 12 for 12 in this game for 30 points, thus ruining yet another Miles Turner possible win. As Miles goes for 8 points, 3 boards, 4 assists, and 2 blocks, he is so close to putting up decent fantasy lines literally on a nightly basis. Like, if he gets 2 rebounds and a 3-pointer on top of this, then you've got the Miles Turner line that you were probably hoping for. I mean, you were also hoping for a big one, but he's never going to be that big guy. Also, Darren Collison, a quieter game, but still an effective one. 8 points, 6 assists, a steal on 4 out of 7 shooting. Missed his 3-pointer, but otherwise, I mean, this is it. You know, you're going to get 8 to 12 points out of Darren on good percentages. You're going to get 5 or 6 assists. You're going to get a steal. If you were hoping for big eye-popping numbers, he's just not that guy. But if this is the bad, and the last couple of games were the good, then you've got yourself a top 75 guy again. The guy that I was disappointed in this game, not even Miles Turner necessarily, was Tyreke Evans, who looks like after he had his little team rule violation, he doesn't fit in anymore. 5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and a block, so I guess it could have been a lot worse. But 2 out of 8 shooting, couple turnovers, missed a free throw, no 3-pointers. I need to see him get it going a little bit. I'd like to see him play more minutes, but frankly, if he can just get up to about 24, that's enough for him to hold standard league value. 20 is not. So let's keep one eye on Tyreke Evans as well. The New York Knicks side, also a team that we were tracking closely yesterday. The starting lineup. This one continues to keep them in basketball games. You know, this is a competitive game with Indiana. Pacers, by the way, ended up covering. It was 5.5 when we did our show yesterday. The hard lean I had from yesterday was Dallas, as you may recall, and they covered pretty easily in that game with the Lakers. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Tim Hardaway Jr. is just rolling right now. This is what a healthy THJ can do. He's got 37 points last night. But the notes from yesterday's game are not about the big guy. It's about the dudes we were keeping an eye on. We were keeping an eye on Mitchell Robinson, and he was bad. We were keeping an eye on Frank Ntilikina, and he was bad. Lost the aggression that was so key in his last couple of ball games. We were watching Enes Kanter, and he was not very good, although a lot of that is the fact that he just missed a bunch of shots. You know, he went 3 for 11. He would normally go 5 or 6 for 11, which would put him closer to, 11 or 13 and 6, which is not good, but not 7 and 6 with no other counting stats. Noah Vonleh was a guy that we were keeping one eye on, and he had a really big game with 14 and 10, 2 steals and 3 blocks. Okay, let's talk about this game a little bit more. Vonleh, throughout his entire career, has largely been a rebounding specialist. Remember there were times, I can't remember, I think it was late, not last year, but the previous season. So very early on in this podcast history, it was like 4 months into actually doing the show, I talked a lot about Vonleh and his ability with Portland to come in and get you 9 rebounds off the bench. It was end of the season stuff. Like, okay, I can make up ground in rebounds. you guys might remember this story. Those of you that didn't listen 2 seasons back, well, here, it'll be new to you. I had a team in a roto league, and I was about 3 points back of first place. I think it was 2 or 3 points back on the last day of the regular season. But there were 4 teams, one of them was less involved, but a couple of them were up near the top with me, that were within about 45 rebounds of one another, which seems crazy, right? The last day of the season, with a games cap of 90 at every position. So we're all approaching 900 games played, and there are 4 teams separated by about 40 rebounds. And so I'm looking at this with about a week to go. I could see this starting to develop. And I started picking up guys like Vonleh, and I started picking up guards that could rebound even if they didn't do anything else. At that late juncture, I don't remember who the guards were that I was using at that point, but it was like some weird point guard that was more like a shooting guard and even played some small forward, so he was getting 5 rebounds a game. And these other teams kept trotting out Klay Thompson, which in a vacuum, of course you want Klay Thompson over some clanger that I'm picking up off the waiver wire, some stink ball player that I plugged in there, but my guy got 5 rebounds and Klay got 3. And so for the last 2 to 3 games they played, I caught up 5 to 10 rebounds in a league that was going to be decided, I could tell, by less than 40 rebounds. So that's when a guy like Vonleh was valuable in the past. But here's the thing. He's playing 30 minutes a night all of a sudden. When he plays 30 minutes, he can almost guarantee you 10 rebounds. What he can't guarantee you is 14 points. What he cannot guarantee you is 3 blocks. What he can't guarantee you is 2 steals and 4 assists. Noah Vonleh, who was sent to the Chicago Bulls late last year, the previous season with Portland, and we can pull up the game log on this if you guys, if you'll bear with me for a moment, because I want to go back to the season when I was actually talking about Vonleh at some length. Late in the 2016-2017 season, Vonleh started getting about 25 to 28 minutes a night for the Blazers. They just had a bunch of guys dinged up, so he slotted in there and played a whole bunch of minutes. When he played 29 or 20 or 30 minutes or whatever it was, he was getting you 7, 8, 12, 14 rebounds. But even in those games, like his big one, the last game of the regular season, he had 12 and 19 in 38 minutes. He still only had 1 steal in that game. He played 35 minutes on April 1st of 2017. He had 12 and 13. He had 2 steals in that game. What we saw yesterday out of Vonleh is unusual. Getting more minutes helps. It helps a lot. That season with Portland, he averaged 17 minutes a game and averaged 5 rebounds, 0.4 steals, and 0.4 blocks. So if you add another quarter onto that, basically another quarter of the 25% on top, what that should equate to is about 6.5 rebounds, 0.5 steals, and 0.5 blocks. For sake of argument, let's say that his per minute might actually have even gotten better. Now, in Chicago, for instance, last year, he played 19 minutes a game and averaged 7 and 7. Okay. How does that equate to 30 minutes? We'll add another 50%, basically, onto 19 minutes. We're gonna go big or go home. That brings his 0.6 steals up to 0.9. It brings his 0.3 blocks up to like 0.45, and his 7 rebounds up to 10.5. That's what you should be looking for. Guys don't completely change who they are season over season, but that's still useful. If he's playing 30 minutes, if he's playing 27 to 30 minutes, I think Vonleh could be a 10 and 10 guy. It could be like the Tristan Thompson. By the way, he's also not a 75% foul shooter. He's 67 for his career. The field goal percent, I think, could actually hold because a lot of his looks are going to be coming right near the bucket. But if you're looking at a guy here that's going to get you 9 points and 10 rebounds and 1 steal and half a block, there's a spot for that. but he's not going to go for 14 and 10 with 4 assists and 5 defensive stats and a three-pointer every night. That's just not going to happen. Would I add him? Hell yes. Would I add him and expect him to be a top 50 guy? Hell no. Absolutely not. Am I excited by him? Yeah. I got a team that needs rebounds. Sweet. That's my guy. Rebounds, a couple of steals. It's an interesting combo platter, right? Sort of PJ Tucker-ish, but with fewer three-pointers and a couple more rebounds, a couple fewer steals. They've got that same feel, but don't expect him to score 14 points every night. That's just not going to be a thing. Ntilikina is the other guy I wanted to spend a moment on in this. I know we touched upon him briefly about 5 minutes ago. 4 points and 7 assists. I like the assists. He's out on the floor. He's facilitating, but I don't like the 8 shots in 33 minutes. His usage rate was 13.7, which was among the lowest on the team. Guys that had a higher usage rate than Frank Ntilikina yesterday: Cantor, Hazonia, Hardaway, Vonleh, Dotson, Burke. I think 2 guys had a lower mark than it. Lance Thomas and Mitchell Robinson had a lower usage rate than Ntilikina. So hopefully, I'm holding him for one more game unless there's somebody magical out on the waiver wire. Hopefully, he gets the aggression cranked back up for the next one, which reminds me we should probably look and find out when the Knicks' next ball game is. Luckily, it's tomorrow. They're in Dallas tomorrow. So if Ntilikina looks better in that one tomorrow, you hang on. If it looks like the aggression is dissipated, goes back to the sort of Frankie of old, then I think you consider moving on. The late games yesterday were not all that interesting to me. Anthony Davis made his return, but it still wasn't enough to get over the Steph Curry monster. I'm so sad. I'm so mad, sad and mad, that I never had picks high enough to get Steph Curry. I wanted him so bad this year. You guys heard me. I spent the whole offseason just gushing about how I thought he was going to be gunning for MVP and the Warriors are actually going to go over their win total mark, and it was all Steph. My logic was 100% Steph. Someone else actually stepped in and said, don't you think one of the reasons they're going to go hard is because they know this is sort of the last year for the Big Four? And I was like, yeah, that's actually really good advice, but all I care about is Steph, and he's so good, and I don't have him anywhere. Crushes my soul. I can't even look at that game right now. Dallas and the Lakers. I put Wesley Matthews back in my lineup yesterday, as I mentioned on the podcast, and it paid off. He went for 21 points on 15 shots. He had 4 3-pointers and 2 steals. That's what you're looking for out of him. Some steals, some threes, some scoring. Easy Lakers defense makes for a nice ball game. I have almost no idea how the Mavericks were as close as they were at the end of this ball game, and then I watched a lot of it and realized the Lakers' defense was atrocious. Offensively, the Lakers looked great. They made 10 3-pointers. They shot 51%. They turned it over 20 times. The Mavs turned it over 23 times, so that was not that pretty. Kyle Kuzma looks super comfortable playing next to LeBron James. Lonzo Ball looked much more comfortable yesterday. Rajon Rondo didn't play that much, and that was awesome for the Lakers' future. JaVale McGee had 7 defensive stats in yesterday's game. I mean, he's just a monster, but it doesn't matter because the guy everybody's worried about is Josh Hart, who came off the bench and didn't have that same fire. Because when both he and KCP come off the bench, it does throw a little bit of a wrench into things. I would give Hart one more game, because I do think the Lakers are going to keep moving lineups around until they figure out who all the best fits are. So there is a very reasonable universe where Hart comes storming back with value again, but you obviously can't put a guy in your lineup who's playing 16 minutes off the bench with a usage rate of 10. Though he is in jeopardy right now, I'm going to say. He's in jeopardy. No, you're not cutting Rajon Rondo. There are going to be games where he plays more than this. You always drafted him as an assist and steal specialist, so you can kind of hang tight a little bit. On the Dallas side, no big moves, game over game. They're a fairly straightforward team. By the way, we're going to be talking to Tyler Watts first thing next week and get a feel for what the Mavs' plans are for the season. But right now, what it looks like is the starters are going to play decent-sized minutes unless they're atrocious, and that was the case for Dennis Smith Jr. yesterday. He was terrible, so J.J. Barea played 25 minutes off the bench, but you can't trust that that'll happen on a nightly basis either. Luka Doncic looked solid. Wesley Matthews was obviously the big winner in that one. And finally, the last game in the late ones, no real storylines from Spurs-Suns. We were watching Elie Okobo, and to me, he did enough to stay on your roster for a couple of reasons. Number one, San Antonio, very good defensively. So you didn't expect that there would be a ton going on for Phoenix in this game. The fact that Okobo still had 5 assists actually felt good to me, and he played 28 minutes in a blowout loss. So I'm holding on Okobo. I want to see how this thing shakes out. If they don't trade for another point guard, I don't know how they give the job back to Isaiah Cannon. I guess we'll keep an eye on that as well. Trevor Ariza busted out of his slump a little bit, 14-7 with 2 steals and 2 3-pointers. You hold there. He's playing enough to be held. TJ Warren got 35 minutes. He should be owned. He's having a really good season, and nobody seems to care because it's not happening in as many minutes as last year, but he's been hyper efficient. He's shooting 51% from the field, 92% at the free throw line, 16-4 with 0.7 steals, 0.7 blocks, only a turnover per game, and almost 2 3-pointers. He's added that a little bit more to his mix this season. And yesterday was the first day he's hit 30 minutes all year. So they are gravitating his direction. And we would like to know more about this Phoenix Suns team. What are they planning on doing with all of these bodies as they get healthy? Are they going to pull off any trades? And luckily, we have just the thing for that. Well, excited to be joined by Adam Maynes of Valley of the Suns. valleyofthesuns.com, at Valley of the Suns on Twitter. We're learning more about what's to come of the Phoenix Suns. It's been a weird start to the year. It's been at times difficult. The injury to Devin Booker obviously throwing a wrench into things that were already a tiny bit wrenched up. But the thought here is, and certainly for those that are trying to glean things from a fantasy perspective, is who's actually going to do stuff for this team. But before we even get into the nuances of that, just Adam, thoughts on kind of how this season has begun for Phoenix. Obviously, things that could go better, things that have been kind of positives here in the early going, and maybe what folks can expect over the next couple of weeks as things tend to gel and grow.
Certainly. Well, Dan, once again, thank you so much for having me on. This is a blast. So things that have gone positive is DeAndre Ayton has shown that he deserves to be here. He is, I believe one of my viewers told me just this evening that he's leading all rookies in double-doubles, which doesn't surprise me because he's averaging a double-double. He's shooting 64% from the field. So, I mean, like, from a fantasy perspective, those are going to be some great stats. You're going to get points. You're going to get rebounds. You're going to get assists. He's averaging 4 a game. You're going to get field goal percentage. He's not really tearing it up with in blocks right now, but I mean, you're going to fill up some other categories. So he, though, for the Suns has been that kind of bright spot that, you know what, the Suns might be 1-5, but they've got DeAndre Ayton. And you know, the fact of the matter is this is the franchise's 51st year in the NBA, and this is their first time where they've ever had a true and legitimate franchise center. So that in and of itself has been, incredibly exciting for fans. Pairing him up with Devin Booker, of course. I mean, Ayton started the Shaq Kobe 2.0 phenomena, back in college before, even he was drafted. And so Suns fans have really been kind of latching onto that because who has Devin Booker been compared to most of the last 3 years? But Kobe Bryant. So you get a guy who thinks, hey, I can be the next Shaq. And voila, we've got that going. So that has been exciting. Obviously, Booker's missed his last 2 games because of a left hamstring, but that shouldn't take up too much time. We're all hoping that he comes back on Halloween against the Spurs. So those are our exciting spots. Everything else, though, has been sucks.
Yeah, lacking a hair. Yeah. So how does it all come together? You've got some veterans that are sort of, I think the feeling I got was they were supposed to show the young guys a little bit more about prep and winning culture and things like that, and it hasn't sunk in yet, but it's only been a week and a half. So what is the expectation, I think, from those that are are following this team on a night-to-night basis as to, what the growth curve. How long should people expect it to take? Are there guys that are just not going to work in this situation, or is it similar to many other teams where you kind of have to exercise some patience?
We did not expect to have to exercise this much patience. I mean, we thought Ryan Anderson was going to come and hit some threes. We thought Trevor Ariza was going to come and hit some threes. We thought Tyson Chandler was going to be a decent backup center to DeAndre Ayton. We thought Mikal Bridges was going to get minutes. We thought, we thought, and then nothing has really kind of panned out the way it was supposed to. And the way on paper it really looks like it should have. I mean, Tyson Chandler is a legit aged veteran center. He should be, playing a little bit better on defense, and especially because he is kind of, he's a good defensive center. Trevor Ariza and Ryan Anderson, they've been shooting a lot of threes in their recent career with the Houston Rockets. They're suddenly not falling. Josh Jackson was supposed to have now he's finished his rookie year. He had that killer second half of last year. He spent all summer fixing his 3-point shot. He's shooting 25% from beyond the arc, and after his first game where he shot 3 of 4, he's now shooting 12% from 3. I mean, so there wasn't supposed to be this kind of growth curve. Now, we weren't expecting to win a lot, but we were thinking 6 games to go 3-3, maybe 2-4, but be competitive. All right, now we're talking. They're 1-5, and they've been blown out 5 times.
So doesn't some of that statistic, just from a numbers standpoint, don't some of those numbers just have to come up on their own just from sheer volume? You can't imagine that they're going to shoot that poorly all season.
Well, I think Klay Thompson proved tonight that numbers leading up into any particular game don't really mean a whole lot. And so, I mean, I would expect Ryan Anderson to shoot better than 20% or whatever he is shooting from 3, 22.7%. I mean, I would expect that to creep back up into the 30s. But, if he's not shooting 36, 38%, I mean, he was 38 last year, 40% the year before, 36 the year before that. If he's not getting around there, then what the hell's the point? And so if Trevor Ariza isn't shooting 36, 38%, I believe it's at around 32%, it's just like, all right, well, then you're paying these guys, but they don't have to play necessarily. So do we go into full tank mode once again? Do we play the young kids for another year, bench these veterans who just aren't panning out? The one, though, kind of constant that Suns fans have been gleaning onto is the fact that we don't have a point guard. Isaiah Canaan is not a starting point guard in the NBA. He's a backup. I've compared him to Nigel Knight back from the early 90s with the Suns. I mean, he's a score-first kind of guy. The way he plays the game, he looks to penetrate first before he does anything else. That works okay on when a reserve unit. But when you're really trying to get Devin Booker the ball, get all these shooters the ball, Canaan just can't hang. And so these guys have not had that point guard distributor that, say Ryan Anderson, Trevor Ariza had in Houston with both James Harden and Chris Paul. And so maybe if the Suns can either find a diamond in the rough in Elie Okobo, the rookie, their first pick from the second round this past summer, if he can become a diamond in the rough and actually, show that, hey, he can actually distribute the ball, he can keep the offense flowing, that might help. So I still think it's too early, and I think most fans would agree with you. It's too early to really just kind of flip the switch and go, all right, screw it, Ariza, Ryan, Chandler, you're going to the bench, to the end of the bench, we're going to play these young kids. Because if Ellie can show that he can distribute the ball, then you're right. Then kind of by the laws of nature, those numbers are going to go up. And then if interim general manager James Jones can make a deal that surprises us and get Rajon Rondo, or it wouldn't be Rajon, but get a veteran point guard in here for the rest of the season, that might help too. As it stands, though, if that doesn't happen, I don't think these guys' numbers go up because I just don't think they're going to get the ball consistently enough the way they need to and where they need to in order to take the shots they're accustomed to.
Do you think they're going to continue to get the minutes in order to get those shots, or is there a point at which the Suns might consider pulling the plug on the veterans and just go full-bore youth? And we saw kind of how that could go last year, and it wasn't super pretty at the fear of sounding a bit negative. It was a lot of chucking. There were a lot of just, into the front court and then fire. And I mean, I guess a lot of that comes back down to the point guard situation, but how does that play itself out as the season goes on in your best guess?
Well, I think TJ Warren is slowly playing himself into the starting lineup. The guy has just been, he's another player who has not had a 3-point shot for his career, worked the entire summer shooting hundreds of threes, I'm sure, a day, and all of a sudden is shooting 47.8 from beyond the arc. He's averaging 15.2 points off the bench. I mean, which is exactly what a good team needs. I mean, when the Suns were great in the mid-2000s, they had Leandro Barbosa. They had a guy that was going to score 15 points off the bench. Back in the Barkley era, you had Cedric Sabalas, a point-a-minute scorer. So good teams need a guy like T.J. Warren. The problem is the Suns aren't good. So what they need, and what I'd say they need a guy like T.J. Warren, they need a guy like T.J. Warren off the bench. So the Suns aren't good. They still need to get some scoring from the starting unit so that way they can try to remain competitive and stay into a game and not get blown up by the second quarter. So I think he's playing himself into the starting lineup so long as his shots from the outside keep falling. And the guy that would be benched, I think, would be Ariza, because Ariza's a small forward. We would like it to be Ryan Anderson. And I thought over the summer that Ariza was going to be able to play some power forward, but he really is, he's a small guy. I want to say he only weighs about 210 pounds. So unless he was shooting 42% from three and that stretching of the floor allowed the offense to work in a way where he could still play some power forward and they could use some mismatches on the defensive end to kind of cover up his size deficiency, I think it would have to be a reason that goes to the bench, which just means that Ryan Anderson is 22.7% three-point shooting percentage is going to have to stay on the starting lineup. Because they got nobody else. They have nobody else at power forward. Their two great weaknesses are point guard and power forward. And we kind of hoped that Isaiah Kanan could be a fill-in. It's just not looking that way. I have been banging the Devin Booker for point guard a la James Harden for over a year now. That hasn't worked out nearly as well as I was hoping, although they've got enough other issues that I have hope, but I'm not going to be a schmuck and hold on to that forever. And then, so with the power forward, though, they don't have another power forward. They got nobody. It's like, at that point, you got to play smaller guys. And then, again, if those shots aren't falling, the deficiencies on the defensive end are just going to become even more pronounced. In games where they're being blown up by 30 now, they're getting blown up by 40, 45, and it just becomes, 2017, 18 all over again.
So, and this is a really difficult question, but if you had to guess, do you think they do bring in a point guard, or do you think they end up standing pat?
No, if I had to guess, I say they do. I couldn't tell you when, just because it will depend on who they're targeting and what teams are willing to take back. I think the Suns might be at a point where something that seemed unfathomable over the summer would be that they might be willing to trade Josh Jackson. Jackson hasn't been playing so hot this season so far, but again, no point guard to get him the ball, and he's been playing out of position as well. He's been playing some point just because he kind of can, but it's just nothing. It's definitely not his forte. He needs to play like a Sean Marion where he just gets the ball off of cuts and that sort of thing. But my guess would be, they're going to find a point guard. Who and when, though, that I don't feel like I can speculate yet, just because I don't know who teams are going to be willing to trade, and I don't know who the Suns are going to be willing to trade for that player. I'm hoping they're able to go young. I'm hoping that the Lakers are willing to move on from Lonzo Ball because they're going to be moving in a different direction come free agency. A lot of fans love Spencer Dinwiddie from Brooklyn. A lot of fans love D. Russell because he's one of Devin Booker's best friends. And so to bring him in, I think just makes fans feel a little bit more comfortable that Booker isn't going to bolt. He can't bolt now that he's signed an extension, but he's not going to demand a trade at some point because he's got his boy here. So it's just a matter of then, okay, when can they be traded? And then who would they be willing to take?
I love the idea of Spencer Dinwiddie on the Suns.
I love him.
Perfect fit. He's not a shoot-first point guard. It's exactly – he'd be an incredible fit. I just don't know what it would take to get a guy like that. Again, by the way, talking to Adam Maynes of Valley of the Suns here on Fantasy NBA today. So, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Adam, but sort of a question that leans a little bit more on the fantasy side is, we know there's Ayton, we know there's Booker. It sounds like, in talking to you, T.J. Warren is the other guy you think is going to be putting up more stats in the not-too-distant future. Am I reading that right?
Well, I got him on my fantasy team, so I'm really banking on it.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. You got to have at least one player from your home team, and both Ayton and Booker went ahead of my ability to draft him. But yeah, no, T.J. Warren, he's a scorer. He's not going to get you a whole bunch else statistically. He's not going to get you many dimes or assists or rebounds, but he's going to get you points, and he's going to do it efficiently. Since he came to the league, he's been an efficient scorer. And so, as a small forward, I'm very happy with him. He's averaging over 15 points a game right now. I'm trying to pull up his stats, so I do apologize. He's averaging over 15 points right now, and I want to say over
it's about
51% from the field. So 3.7 rebounds. It's not going to be a whole lot. 1.2 assists, not much, but 15.2 points, and that's also only 23 minutes off the bench. So if he does become a starter, I wouldn't expect his. Well, you know what, though? I mean, I could see his numbers going up again. He averaged 19.6 points last year, and I swore he was going to be a 20-point scorer again this year if he got the minutes. And so he might be getting those minutes at some point. Again, I still think he could supplant Trevor Ariza in the not-so-distant future. Again, they might still be waiting to see if things kind of just settle down a little bit. But if he does get to start a role, then the scoring is going to go through he and Booker, and especially in transition, and that's where he's going to get a ton of his points, and that's why his averages are going to be so high. So, and now that he's had a 3-point shooting too, he's averaging 1.8 a game. But if he's able to shoot 38%, which would be a 10% drop from where he's at right now, that would still be a great number for a, I would guess he's going to be like a top 10. Not top 10, but top 100 pick. He's going to be like your 7th, 8th, 9th player that you draft, and those are great numbers in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. If he can keep the field goal percentage high while adding 3-pointers, that's something that a lot of guys are unable to do. Could anybody? I know we talked about Okobo a little bit. Is there a universe where he could put up the kind of stats from the point guard spot that would be worth using on a fantasy team? You think?
We are hoping so. His last game when he had 18.7 assists and 5 rebounds, he is a shooter by nature. He's a very good shooter by nature. And he obviously he can see the offense. The offense flows well through him. So, that would be the hope. My only thing is, and I said this to a lot of fans who are like, oh my gosh, Ole Kobo, DeAnthony Melton, they were drafted in the second round for a reason. Now, obviously, second-round players sometimes spark. Jimmy Butler, if I recall, he was second round. Sometimes these guys, they sparkle. And you find that diamond in the rough. Landry Barbosa, who I referenced earlier, was second round. Nickel Knight, who I referenced earlier, was second round. So, they happen. But I don't put a ton of faith in a second-round pick. I'm just more pleasantly surprised than kind of have that expectation. That said, his skill set and his maturity seems to lend to the idea that he might actually be a pretty decent point guard, and it could happen sooner rather than later. I personally, as a fantasy guy, wouldn't put any stock into it. I would want to see him, and hell, even as a Suns fan, excuse me for cursing, even as a Suns fan, I wouldn't expect consistency from him unless he gave it to me for a full month. I'd want to see it for 4 or 5 weeks of, okay, this kid is legit. And so I wouldn't expect it, but we are hoping. We are definitely hoping. And look at this right now. So as I've told you, I'm streaming this live on Twitter and Periscope, and I got fans right now. Elliot Kobo could eventually be a starter. He is worth starting right now and letting work through. So he definitely could be. We're hoping. I've been a little bit more pessimistic simply because of where I was drafted. If it was taken 14th or 15th, then yeah, I'm like, I would expect starter minutes and starter quality and starter stats very quickly. But in the second round, if it takes him 2 or 3 years, or if it never pans out and it just becomes a reserve, then I think that's definitely more of what I would foresee for him in the future.
Outstanding. Adam Maynes, my man, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
You're the man, brother. Thank you for having me. I'd love to come back.
That was fun. We got to do this thing live and recorded simultaneously. Folks, if you want to follow Adam, he is, again, at Valley of the Suns. Do you have a personal Twitter you want to give out on here or no?
Nah, I do everything through that one. Yeah. I'm on that all day.
Fair enough. valleyofthesuns.com is the website. And, of course, every episode here on Fantasy NBA Today, we tie a coupon code to the guest. And this one's just going to be SUNS, SUNS. You get $3 off anything over at hoop-ball.com. The in-season premium pass is what's going right now. Adam, that was awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah, anytime, brother.
That was Adam Maynes. Again, coupon code is SUNS on that bad boy. Please do go use it. Check out our premium stuff at Hoopball. That was fun. That was interesting. I've never done... I've done plenty of live interviews that are also being broadcast live, but it's rare that I've done the interview when the interviewee is broadcasting live. So that was kind of cool. I hope you guys got to check that out on Periscope when we recorded it about 36 hours ago. So that confirmed a few things, by the way, in going back to that Suns last game, which, by the way, hadn't happened yet when I had talked to Adam. So a bit of a clairvoyant moment for him, talking about TJ Warren doing more. He's a big fan of TJ, as you just heard in that interview. And, I mean, he's only owned in 58% of Yahoo leagues. He's available, I think, in like 1 out of all of my leagues. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, perhaps, in just league size. But in a 9-category situation, he is absolutely worth having on your fantasy team. And he's going to have to do stuff for as long as Devin Booker is out, and probably even after Booker comes back. So TJ Warren, that's probably your interesting footnote of the day. Obviously, keep a close watch on the Phoenix point guard thing. They are going to be a homework assignment basically every time they play until we figure out what they're doing there. Ryan Nakobo here, going to be on my bench in any leagues with a games cap, but it does look like he's going to be doing things for at least the near future. Turning the page, however, now to the Thursday card. And before we do, I want to stop in the middle of the podcast and thank everybody again for listening to this show every single day. And also thank those of you that have left positive reviews over the last little bit. If there are any of you out there that haven't yet, I would get down once again on bended knee and say, please subscribe to Fantasy NBA Today. Leave us some kind words if you so choose. A rating or a review goes a long way. And maybe the easiest thing you can do is when we talk about the podcast, when we tweet it out or whatever, just help spread the word. Retweet it, quote tweet it, whatever you want to do. We not to say that we need everybody's help, but we certainly appreciate it in helping to spread the word and helping to let other people know that this pod is out there, because the more we grow, the more we can do. Simple as that. The more we grow, the more we can do. So thanks again, everybody. Looking forward to the continued growth of Fantasy NBA Today. And here's Thursday. Denver is in Cleveland. The Nuggets favored by 4.5. I think that's going to surprise some people. But remember, this is the second half of a back-to-back for Denver. They played in Chicago last night and only won by 1 over the Bulls. Perhaps a little bit of a weird sensation settling in. So ever so slightly into the Cleveland side. But again, I don't think I can trust that Cavs team as far as I can throw them. Philly by 5 over the Clippers. I've been playing the Clippers fiddle or whatever you want to call it. They're way better than people realize. I think this is a pretty accurate line, though. Philly probably a couple-point neutral site favorite. No strong feelings about this game. If you're going either way, it's probably got to be to the LA side. Charlotte by 1.5 over the Thunder at home. This is going to surprise some people, but the Hornets are decent, and the Thunder really go as the field goal percent goes. If they just make shots, they win, but they have not been all that impressive so far this year. I rarely, as you may recall last season, I rarely bet on the Thunder outside of really obvious revenge and schedule stuff because they are so Westbrook-centric. And if he makes his shots, then other guys get open looks, and then they make their shots, and it's this snowball thing where either they look awesome or terrible. I don't think I've ever watched a Thunder game where I thought, they look adequate tonight. Sacramento by 2.5 in Atlanta. This one's going to try to draw a lot of people in. I would rather leave this thing alone. Boston by 2.5 against the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee undefeated right now, so they are now a neutral site favorite over the Boston Celtics. I repeat, things have flipped out east, and it didn't take long. The Bucks are a neutral site favorite against the Boston Celtics. I think this is going to be a really good ball game, and I also think Boston wins it. I think this is the day that snaps the Bucks' winning streak. They have been challenged this year. Remember, they clobbered the 76ers. But overall, the Bucks' schedule has actually been pretty damn easy. The one game that looked like they were going to get truly challenged was their last one against the Raptors, and there was no Kawhi. There was no Giannis either. But when you take the superstars out and you put a team at home that's been playing well, the Bucks have won their 2 road games this year over the Hornets and the Timberwolves. This will be their first true road test of the season. I think this game is going to surprise a lot of people. I think the Bucks are a much better team this year. I'm really happy with the over bet that we put out. But the Celtics, to me, this is the game what they're getting up for. This is going to be a tight one. It's going to be hard fought. I think Boston pulls it out at the end, and covering 2 or 2.5 is not a whole lot. It's one shot. So slight lean to the Boston side in that one. Portland favored by 4.5 over the New Orleans Pelicans. This is a difficult one because the Pelicans played in Golden State, and then they got to fly up to the Pacific Northwest and go again. However, this is basically calling these two teams well, you know what? I got two things button heads in this ball game. Number one, New Orleans is very good, and they destroyed Portland in the playoffs last year. Number two, New Orleans is going to be a little bit tired for this game on a back-to-back with travel. Number three, Portland is coming back home off, I believe, a decent length road trip, although I can't remember the exact length of it. We'll double-check on that. 4-game road trip. They haven't played a home game since the 22nd. So generally, I like to fade teams their first game home. I like to back teams on playoff revenge. I like to back teams that seem to have another team's number. There's just too many things going on. That's the problem here. If Portland wasn't coming home off a long road trip, I probably would have backed them on playoff revenge. If they only had playoff revenge, if they were coming off the road trip but they didn't have playoff revenge, I probably would have faded them. As it turns out, I think you got to just leave this thing alone. There's two strongly competing gambling angles in this ballgame where a team coming home off a long road trip, especially a successful one, there's usually a letdown, but I don't think they're going to have a letdown against the team that fully undressed them in the postseason last year. So I think this is going to be a good ball game. To me, it's going to come down to a couple of shots at the end. In that case, you probably have to take the team that's catching a bunch of points, but I think I'd rather leave it alone. My favorite play on the card, if I had to, and I'm not advocating betting any of these things yet. I think we're still settling in a little bit, but certainly my favorite play on the card would be Boston, if anybody's looking at stuff here in this early going. From a fantasy standpoint, Cleveland, guys, is your homework assignment. What the hell is going on with the Cavs? We got to continue to figure this thing out. Who's going to play? Who's going to take the shots? Are the young guys getting run? Are the old guys getting run? Are they competitive? Denver has a really good defense. What does that do to these guys? Do they fall apart? That is absolutely 100% the homework assignment tonight because most of these other teams don't have a whole lot going on the fantasy side. Denver, not much. Clippers, not much. Philly, not much. Charlotte, I mean, yes, we're sort of watching the timeshares, but largely we're sort of just letting this thing play out while rolling Kemba and Batum out there for now, and probably Jeremy Lamb. Oklahoma City does have one angle. Jeremy Grant. Want to see how he does tonight. He's a guy I've got in a couple of spots, but I'm not starting him yet. Sacramento, Atlanta. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could watch the big man stuff, but to me, it's not that interesting until Atlanta gets healthy. Milwaukee, Boston, nothing there. New Orleans, nothing there. Portland, I think everybody's got one eye on Zach Collins, but that's about it, too. So, you got Zach Collins, you got Jeremy Grant, but you mostly have the Cavaliers. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is your homework assignment for this Thursday night. Tomorrow on Fantasy NBA Today, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, live on YouTube. Aaron Brewski will join me for our live Fun Shirt Friday edition of Fantasy NBA Today. Get your questions in. We'll get that link posted first thing Friday morning, and I hope you will join us for the live show. You can ask questions, literally, in the chat room, and we will answer most of them on air. That's coming up tomorrow. Again, big thanks to Adam Maynes for popping on the pod today. Again, that site is valleyofthesuns.com. They are at Valley of the Suns on Twitter. And the coupon code is SUNS, S-U-N-S, for $3 off the in-season premium pass. At hoop-ball.com, you click on the premium tab. Go get it. You'll be happy you did. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. I am Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris. If you didn't get that already from Twitter, talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.